What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be reacting to how Bluebird Vision saves its company when everyone else walks away. So basically, of course, it's a reaction history about the Bluebird Vision. It's a Bluebird Vision history video by Classic Car Secret. And if you want to see the video, I'll link the original description if you want to want to watch it for yourself. But anyways, we're gonna be reacting to this video, and I hope you guys like and subscribe if you want to see bus related content. And no matter ado, let's react to the video.
Out in a quiet school district yard at sunrise, the pattern looks pretty standard. Long rows of ICCEs with their boxy noses. Lines of Thomas C2s with those sleek, modern fronts. And then, slipped between them, you spot a few bright yellow Bluebird Visions. Same color, same black rub rails, but a slightly different stance, a different look to the hood and windshield. Every American knows the shape of a yellow school bus. It's as much a part of childhood as Little League or Friday Night Football. But almost nobody knows that one of those buses, that Bluebird Vision tucked between the others, once kept its maker from quietly fading out of the picture. For most of its history, Bluebird did what it did best. The body. The shell, the seats, the windows, the interior layout, that was their kingdom. The chassis, the frame and running gear underneath, came from somebody else. GM, Ford, Navistar. As long as those truck builders were willing to sell, the system worked. Then the early 2000s hit, and the ground shifted. ICCE was riding high on International's own chassis. Thomas rolled out the C2 with full Freightliner backing. One by one, Bluebird's lifelines tightened. GM stepped away from the school bus chassis business. Freightliner kept its best hardware in the family for Thomas and wasn't eager to arm a rival. Navistar focused on IC and had little reason to share. That's the ugly part people don't see. When you depend on other companies for your foundation, their strategy becomes your noose. If Bluebird didn't come up with a chassis of its own, it was going to disappear from the Type C game, no matter how good its bodies were. So the question hanging in the air was simple and brutal. What do you do when every supplier you rely on turns their back and walks away? For Bluebird, there was only one answer left: to design a cowled school bus chassis from the ground up and build.
And that's what they did. So basically, when before IC and Thomas used their own truck chassis by Freightliner and International themselves, Bluebird Vision was struggling to actually find chassis to use on their buses. And even at the time, Bluebird 3800s were dying at the time, and if there's no chassis around, well, Bluebird would end of its Type C gang, and the only would end up having the Type D buses. But instead of just killing their buses in the first place, they decided to make it a custom built Bluebird. But anyways, before it became Bluebird Vision, it used to be run by the International Chassis 3800 until International Navistar stepped away to focus on IC bus, along with Freightliner and other chassis like GM, Ford, you name it. Every single chassis stepped away, and Bluebird was kind of struggling to find chassis to use on their buses. And like he said, they build from the ground up.
Build a new bus around it. That bus would be called the Vision. Once Bluebird accepted that it had to stand on its own feet, the first instinct was to reach for something familiar. The logical shortcut was Ford's F650 medium-duty truck. Take a proven commercial frame, hang a school bus body on it, and skip half the pain. On paper, it made perfect sense. Off-the-shelf components, good parts support, less money burned on R&D, and a name every mechanic in America already knew. But the real world is never as simple as the spec sheet. Behind closed doors, the deal with Ford ran into the usual mix of corporate strategy and clashing priorities. Ford had its own plans for the F-Series. Bluebird needed certain changes, certain guarantees, a certain level of commitment to the school bus market. Ford wasn't in the business of building a tailor-made life raft for a bodybuilder. Little by little, the F650 path stopped looking like a lifeline and started looking like a dead end. Eventually, that option was quietly pushed off the table. That's when "we need a chassis" turned into "we have to build our own." Bluebird's engineers had to design the frame, the steering, the engine placement, the suspension layout, all in-house. And they didn't just want a truck with a bus body on top. The Vision chassis was built around three big ideas. Give the driver the best possible view out front. Carve out a big steering angle for tight cul-de-sacs and school driveways, and make the whole thing straightforward to service for districts and their mechanics. For a company known mainly as a bodybuilder, jumping into full chassis design was a huge technical gamble. If they got it wrong, if the frame rode badly, steered poorly, or fell apart in real fleet service, it wouldn't just hurt a single model. It could drag the whole company under. That's why the Vision was never just the next bus in a brochure. It was Bluebird pushing all its chips to the middle of the table and betting that it could build the foundation as well as the body. All that risk and engineering work showed up in the way the finished bus looked from the curb. On paper, the Vision is still a conventional school bus. Engine out front, long hood, driver sitting behind it. But the proportions are different. The nose sits lower than the old trucks it replaced. The hood drops away more sharply, and the windshield leans back at a steeper angle. From the driver's seat, you don't feel like you're peering over a long bluff of sheet metal. You feel closer to the road, closer to the kids. That was the whole point, visibility. Bluebird wrapped that idea into one very specific feature, the Safety View Vision Panel. If you've ever stepped onto one of these buses, you've probably seen it without thinking about it. That clear panel down by the service door. From the outside, it looks like a piece of glass. From the driver...
Actually, a fun fact, I've never seen a Bluebird that had a window, a little visibility on the side. Which is finding unusual, because usually I don't see Bluebirds. Well, nowadays they don't do that anymore, but I guess back then they used to had a little, what you call a visibility glass panel right on the side of the bus, which is slightly unusual, but I don't normally see that in a Bluebird.
Driver's seat, it opens up the blind spot right along the right front corner, exactly where a small child can disappear when they step too close. It exists because too many kids, over too many years, were hit in that danger zone around the nose and door of older buses. The rest of the layout supports the same mission. Big multi-angle mirror sets reach out to cover as much of the blind area as possible. The seat and steering wheel are positioned so the driver doesn't have to lean and hunt for sight lines. A generous steering angle lets the bus swing through tight school lots and cul-de-sacs without crazy backing maneuvers. Depending on the year, you'll see added touches like a driver's airbag and extra lighting over the steps and door area. And if you look closely across the generations, the hood shape, the headlamp clusters, the curve of the glass, you can spot each era of Vision at a glance, the design slowly sharpening around that same core idea.
Yeah, you can actually tell a difference between the 2006 version of the Bluebird Vision and the current Bluebird Vision. It's quite a big difference because over time, Bluebirds improved differences since 2006 or 2004 when they introduced the Vision. There's quite a difference that It went from this quite curvy headlights to look like,
Let the driver see everything that matters. Of course, a bus isn't just about what you can see from the driver's seat. It's also about what you can feel through the floor and the wheel. Under that sloping hood, the Vision has worn a few different hearts over the years. The early buses often carried the Caterpillar C7 diesel, a workhorse familiar to a lot of fleets. As time went on, Bluebird shifted more and more toward the Cummins ISB and later the ISB 6.7, the inline-six diesel many districts still swear by today. When alternative fuels started to gain traction, Ford stepped in on the gasoline and propane side with its 6.8-liter V10, and later the big 7.3-liter Godzilla V8 for gas and propane applications. Most diesel Visions put their power through an Allison automatic. No shifting, just that steady, firm pull older drivers know well.
Yeah, actually, yeah, like like back when Bluebird Vision became a thing, they always used the Caterpillar C7, and then later on transported to, they went from Caterpillar C7 to a Cummins later on, which I could probably believe it would have been in 2008. But if, I could be wrong, but it could be later. But at the same time, not long after, Ford stepped in and, of course, came with, make some, engine options with propane and gasoline. Surprisingly, our bus fleet are actually the current one, which is the Ford Godzilla. But before that became a swap, before the engine became, it used to be called the 6.8-liter Ford Triton V10. But now it's known today as the Ford Godzilla, which I explained just seconds ago. But anyways, let's continue.
The gasoline and propane versions typically run a 6-speed Ford automatic, matched to those truck-based engines. Visually, you can almost read the years off a Vision as it goes by. The first generation hangs on to more of the old conventional look, squarer hood lines, simpler headlamps. The second generation cleans up the nose, tightens the sheet metal, and rides on a more refined frame. The latest third-generation buses look...
Yeah, you can actually tell that actually they kept that hood for a long time. Like in 2008, they had this kind of like curvy side hood and headlights. And over the years, Bluebird Vision changed a lot over the years, especially with driver's view. Like from 2008 to 2010, the driver's view was kind of different. But in the interior looks quite not much changed in the interior, but the exterior looks quite a bit, what you call but 2011 changed a little bit because they changed the gauge cluster, but nothing much changed until 2015 when they introduced the new taller passenger windows and new panels in the interior panels, but yeah.
And rides on a more refined frame. The latest third-generation buses look almost Euro from the front, with a more modern face and updated interior that's ready for propane, gasoline, and even electric power. Out on the road, a Cummins...
Yeah, they added this new grille in 2022, which was quite a big change to Bluebird. For the first time ever in, I don't know what year, how many years they actually had this kind of style hood. I think they had that style hood since 2008. So after under 15 years, then they decided to add a brand new grille to the Bluebird.
6.7 in a Vision has a sound many of us could pick out with our eyes closed.
A&W has a value deals menu, so you can get grass-fed beef for under $4.
That smooth, six-cylinder thrum as it climbs a grade. The steering feels more precise than the old days, the brakes more confident, the takeoff a little cleaner. but it still drives like a real school bus, not a gadget. As the diesel versions settled into their stride, another part of the Vision story started quietly paying the bills: propane. Modern diesel is a complicated business. Emission systems, filters, sensors, and a maintenance schedule that can make a transportation director's head hurt. Propane, by comparison, is a simpler creature. The engines are cleaner burning, the hardware is less fussy, and in many states, the grants and incentives line up neatly behind alternative fuels. Bluebird saw an opening and ran with it. Vision propane buses pair truck-based Ford or GM gasoline blocks with dedicated propane systems, giving districts a package that drinks cheaper fuel, starts easily in cold weather, and doesn't coat the air around the school with diesel smell. For many fleets, fuel and maintenance costs came down, and the noise level dropped with them. From the driver's seat and the student seats, a propane Vision feels a little smoother, a little quieter, a little more modern. From the fleet office,
You know, it's a fun fact. I never ride or driven a Vision, a propane Vision. I see some in Cold Lake, but in Edmonton as well. But I never haven't driven or ridden in a propane. But I heard it's supposed to be quite slightly quiet. I think is that what's supposed to be? Well, even though they share Ford, but I haven't ridden it. And I haven't experienced how propane feels like on a bus. I've seen them, but I don't, I never rode it and drove it that much.
the appeal is just as real. Centralized propane fueling, simpler service routines, and parts shelves that look a lot less intimidating than a wall of diesel after-treatment components. Propane wasn't the last stop either. As laws tightened and zero emission became more than a slogan, the next wave rolled in. States and the federal government started lining up grants and pressure in equal measure, and suddenly, every school bus builder had to answer the same question: where's your electric? Bluebird's answer was the Vision Electric. From the curb,
Oh my gosh, the Vision Electric.
it still looks like a familiar Type C. Same basic body, same.
Yeah, it's the same bus, but except it has a green bumper, and they have the electric symbol in it instead of the iconic stripe, which I noticed difference about the Bluebird Electric.
Profile in the yard. The big change is underneath. Battery packs in place of fuel tanks, an electric drive system where the diesel or propane hardware used to sit.
It's pretty much electric. That's the big difference. It looks like a normal Bluebird Vision, but when you look underneath the bus or the engine, it's actually just a motor. It's just a simple motor, not, an engine. Which is the big difference.
On a full charge, it's built for typical school duty cycles. Short routes, fixed schedules, back to the yard every afternoon, with room for a full load of kids just like its diesel cousins. For districts, the appeal.
Yeah, the only big problem is you can't do like field trips or anything that's long range runs like that. So the only thing it mostly be driving is only about that much. But hey, at least you have to do oil changes that often. But like I said in the last video about the IC bus, I think our fleet, our province is now gonna buy electric buses because we have cold climates and yeah, like I said earlier in the last reaction, I mentioned that I think my company will never buy electric buses because we have frigid climates in our province, so possibly Bluebird Visions would not come in mind, but could imagine that could happen. But like I said, it'd be impossible to run them in these unpredictable weather.
Is clear. Quiet departures on early mornings, no exhaust hanging over the sidewalk, and a bus that fits perfectly into predictable neighborhood runs. The trade-offs are real too. Higher upfront cost, charge.
Also, not only Bluebirds, also Vision's not gonna be the only bus that's gonna come with an electric version, but also the Type B, Type D versions of the Bluebirds, including the All-American and the I forgot the other ones, but like I said,
infrastructure to install, technicians to train on high-voltage systems. Seen in the long view, though, the pattern is hard to miss. The same Vision chassis that started life with diesel, then grew into propane, is now carrying electricity as well. Each step...
That's how amazing how much Bluebird started with diesels, what's it called? Caterpillar 6.C7, and it went from a Cummins to a Ford, propane gasoline to an all-electric bus for parts of certain states like California or Florida, which surprisingly Broward does have currently a Bluebird Electrics, which is good for them, honestly. Like, at least they're trying to go to electric future, you know?
A new chapter built on the same foundation Bluebird bet its future on. When you step back from engines and batteries and look at the numbers on a spreadsheet, you can see what Bluebird was really aiming at with the Vision: total cost of ownership. They didn't try to win by building the wildest-looking bus in the yard. They tried to win by giving districts something they could run for a long time without tearing their hair out. Simple service routines, parts that weren't exotic, and a platform that didn't need to be custom-tailored for every little order. A lot of components are shared with the All-American line, which means fewer part numbers on the shelf and less retraining every time a mechanic walks from one bay to another. Against that, ICCE leans on International's dealer network and presence in big fleets. Thomas C2 brings a very modern look and the full weight of Freightliner's truck operation behind it. The Vision fights back with what it does best: outstanding visibility, a familiar, real school bus feel, and a broad menu of diesel, propane, and now electric. Drivers tend to climb in and feel at home quickly. They can see the nose, judge the corners, and trust the mirrors. And on the balance sheet, the Vision has become one of Bluebird's two main pillars, right alongside the All-American. The reason the company is still very much in the Type C game instead of just a memory. So when you look at a Vision now, sitting between the ICs and C2s in a quiet yard, you're not just...
I was saying earlier about how much if Bluebird Type Cs if they haven't made a custom build Bluebird, they would no longer be in the Type C gang, but also the Type C buses for Bluebirds would have been extinct. And the only thing they would only offer is a Type D. But at least the good thing they did make custom builds, because if they didn't, well, their Type D models would be extinct. Like, I mean, there would be no longer Type C Bluebirds all across the world, but at least that's the good thing why they did that. It's just so people can actually are familiar with these buses, but I don't know what I'm saying, but
seeing another yellow bus. You're seeing the result of a desperate bet that started as a matter of survival and ended up as the backbone for three eras: diesel, propane, and now electric. For a lot of Americans born between the mid-1990s and about 2010, this is the school bus of childhood. The feel of those rubber steps under your shoes, the vinyl seat that stuck to your jacket in winter, the soft hum of a Cummins, or the gentle pull of a propane engine, and that safety view panel by the door catching the morning light. Sometimes a vehicle isn't just transportation. It's the anchor that lets a company stay alive long enough to evolve. 30 or 40 years from now, will an old Vision EV rolling into a car show draw the same smiles we give a 50s Chevy or a GM Fishbowl today? I'd love to hear your story. Did you ride a Vision to school, drive one, or wrench on one in the yard? Drop your memories in the comments. Hit like if this brought a picture back in your mind, and subscribe. Next time, we might turn the spotlight on the ICE, the Thomas C2, or the propane school bus revolution itself.
Alright, you guys, this is the end of the reaction. Anyways, I'm gonna give you some thoughts about the video that, about the Bluebirds. So yeah. Yeah, but the first time when my bus company decides to buy Bluebirds, it was quite a different path they were trying to do, something new that they never did for 20 years. Well, back then, the buses that used to run back in the day were Internationals or GM or Chevys at the time. Back then I think someone used to have Bluebirds back in the day when Bluebirds used to be the golden times at the time, until IC became a thing and took over the whole lot. And of course, Bluebirds became extinct in the company until 2023 when they start purchasing new fleets of Bluebirds for the first time in 20 years. What was unusual is that they branded their numbers to a B numbering instead of just, whatever it is, 37, 38, or higher. Which is quite unusual because usually they would just, number it higher instead of lower. But I'm not sure it's because the name Bluebird became a thing and they hate to not, member it to, go up, to make the number go up. But more like they put the number B to pronounce it's a Bluebird instead of just, a random bus. Just like other companies do nowadays. But anyways, I'm not gonna talk too much about my company's Bluebirds, but it is nice to do it. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the reaction. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more reactions like this. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next reaction or video. But goodbye.